She was down to her last $48, facing foreclosure and an unforgiving Montana blizzard. Then 15 tattooed bikers showed up at her door. Sounds like the beginning of a horror story, right? But what happened next might just restore your faith in humanity. This is the true power of kindness, resilience, and a diner that became a lighthouse for the lost. If you've ever doubted that small actions can lead to unimaginable miracles, stay with us. Because by morning, over 100 motorcycles had surrounded her tiny diner, and what they brought will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, what time are you watching this? Where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment, we'd love to know. Hit subscribe because stories like this, they don't come around often. Red Hill, Montana, 7:42 p.m. The snow came hard like it had something personal to prove. It slammed against the windows of Maggie Green's roadside diner with such force it made the lights flicker. Outside, Highway 18 was a white blur of wind and silence. No headlights. No tire tracks, just snow swallowing everything whole. Inside, Maggie stared at the cash register like it owed her an apology. $48.23. That's what she had left. Not enough for the gas bill. Barely enough for one day of groceries. Definitely not enough for the 3 months of mortgage payments she owed. The foreclosure notice lay folded under the counter like a snake, ready to strike. The deadline? 7 days. After that, the diner. The lantern, the last thing she and her late husband built together, would be gone. Maggie was 56, a widow, no kids, just this diner and the ghosts that came with it. She shuffled slowly past the red booths, running her hand over the worn vinyl where the seams had split. Booth 5, Jared's favorite. Her husband always said that Booth had the best view of the mountains. Of course, tonight there was nothing to see except white rage. She sighed. The coffee pot burbled weakly behind the counter, half full of something that had been hot around noon. The radio in the corner, her only link to the world, spat static like a dying firecracker. No music, no trucker voices. Just the wind and that gut punch number, $48. That was it. She flipped the open sign to closed and reached for the lights. That's when she heard it, not wind, not snow. A low, steady rumble. Her first thought was snowplow. But no, it was too rhythmic, too alive. It was mechanical thunder. Gravel and chrome spun into sound. She pressed her face to the window, squinting. Nothing. Just snow. Then, headlights. Dozens of them, shimmering shapes pushing through the storm. Motorcycles. Big ones, the kind you only see in movies where things don't end well. Maggie stepped back, her breath catching. The roar grew louder, engines revved like wild beasts, their sound bouncing off the hills like a war cry. 15 bikes, all black, all riding in tight formation, undeterred by snow, ice, or fear. They pulled into the diner's small parking lot, their headlights slashing through the whiteout and flooding the front windows like stage lights. For a moment, the whole place looked like a scene out of a dream, or a warning. Then the engine stopped. The silence that followed was somehow louder than the roar. Maggie's hand hovered over the light switch. She could pretend to be closed. Just flick the switch, duck behind the counter and let them pass like ghosts. But she didn't move. Not yet. One of them stepped off his bike. A tall man with thick arms and a black leather coat crusted in snow. He limped slightly as he walked toward the door. Behind him, the others slowly dismounted, moving stiffly like the cold had gotten inside their bones. Maggie could see their breath fogging through the storm. They looked half-frozen, worn down, not wild, just tired. Still, her heart thudded like a drum in her chest. As the lead rider neared the door, he paused. Through the glass, she could see his face now. Salt and pepper beard, frost in his eyebrows, eyes so tired they made her chest ache. He didn't bang. Didn't shout, he knocked 3 times, soft and waited, not demanding. Just hoping. Maggie looked back at her last $48, at the eviction notice, and then she heard Jared's voice in her head. This place ain't just a diner, Mags, it's a lighthouse. It's meant to stay on when the rest of the world goes dark. She took a deep breath, walked to the door, and opened it. The moment Maggie opened the door, the cold slapped her like an insult. Snow spiraled inward, biting her cheeks, scattering across the black and white checkered floor. The tall man stood still, letting the warmth hit him like something holy. He didn't speak at first, just lowered his head slightly in silent gratitude. Then his voice came, rough, cracked from wind and road. "Ma'am, we don't mean any harm. We just need a place to wait out the storm." Behind him, the others loomed, 15 of them. Their leather jackets were stiff with frost. Patches across their backs shimmered in the light. Skulls, wings, thunderbolts. Not the kind of patches worn for fashion. The kind that warned you to stay away. Maggie's pulse quickened. She counted 4 of them with face tattoos. One man had a jagged scar running across his cheek like a lightning bolt. Another had knuckles tattooed with letters she couldn't read from here, but they looked like they hurt. Her instinct screamed, "Lock the door. Say no. Call someone." But then she noticed the limp again, and the younger one, barely more than a kid, shivering so hard his helmet rattled when he removed it. 15 men. 15 miles of blizzard, no backup, no warmth. Just cold, steel, and silence. She opened the door wider. "Come in," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "All of you." They didn't rush. They didn't swagger. One by one, they entered like respectful mourners at a funeral. Boots stomped, snow fell, breath fogged. Each man paused to shake off the storm before stepping fully inside. The one with the mohawk, who looked like he could bench press a pickup truck, actually held the door for the smallest rider at the back. It was oddly gentle. Maggie moved behind the counter, still watching. Still unsure, the tall man stepped forward again. "Name's Cole Bishop," he said. "President, Northern Timber Chapter." He nodded toward the window. "We were coming back from a funeral down in Helena. Didn't know the storm would turn like this. Highway patrol shut everything down behind us. We're stuck." He didn't ask for anything, didn't demand, just stood there with frost in his beard and shame in his eyes. Maggie reached for the coffee pot. "Seats are open. Sugar and cream are on the counter. I'll get you warmed up best I can." The look that passed between the bikers was one she didn't expect. Relief, real, visible. Like someone just threw them a rope while they were drowning. They moved carefully, almost delicately, into the booths. Their large frames made the place feel smaller, but they were mindful. No one slammed things. No one raised their voice. Even the one with the spiderweb tattoo on his neck wiped his boots 3 times before sitting down. The silence grew comfortable, familiar. Like they knew this diner meant something, even if they didn't know why yet. Maggie poured coffee into the thick ceramic mugs, the last clean ones she had. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From the weight of the moment. She caught herself studying them. The younger one, thin, nervous, with downcast eyes, was sitting near the window hugging his elbows. He looked more like a college dropout than a biker. The oldest, a man with long gray hair and ink covering both hands, sat closest to the counter and gave her a respectful nod when their eyes met. Cole slid onto a stool near the register. His coat was open now, revealing a small American flag pin, a service ribbon, and a patch stitched neatly above his heart. Combat vet, Iraq 06-08. That hit her like a jolt. He wasn't just a biker. He'd been a soldier. "Haven't seen snow come down like this in 20 years, Cole said, wrapping his hands around the mug. "Almost didn't make that last hill before we saw your light." Maggie nodded slowly. She didn't ask questions. Just kept pouring, one pot gone. Then another. She had 15 bikers in her diner. Freezer with nothing but 2 cans of beans, some bread, and a half slab of butter. And $48 left. But somehow she didn't feel scared anymore, because under the layers of leather and myth, they were just people, tired, cold, human. And in that moment, she remembered what Jared always said. The light's for everyone. Mags, especially the ones who don't think they deserve it. She looked around the room at the mismatched group of men thawing out in her diner and whispered to herself, "Then let it shine." It was almost 9 p.m. now. The wind outside hadn't let up. If anything, it screamed louder, like it was angry that someone had found shelter. Inside, the lantern had never felt more alive. The big men, tattooed, leather-clad, carrying years of road behind their eyes, sipped coffee like it was the first warmth they'd had in days. They didn't speak much, just quiet murmurs, heavy breaths, and the occasional groan of thawing joints. Maggie kept the pot moving, refilling every cup without being asked. She didn't know all their names yet. but she was starting to learn them by feel. The one with the mohawk and tree trunk arms, Frankie. She heard someone call him, laughed quietly at a joke one of the older guys whispered. The youngest, still shivering, was named Jace. His helmet sat on the booth beside him, his eyes darting around like he was still deciding if this was real. The man with the scar down his face. Marcus hadn't said a word since coming in, but when Maggie passed by his booth with more coffee, he reached out gently and straightened a tipped salt shaker. That said enough. They weren't what the world said they were, or at least not just that. Maggie retreated behind the counter, taking a breath. Her cardigan still smelled faintly like grease and cinnamon. She clutched the edge of the prep station and stared down at the empty bread box. Then at the freezer. She didn't need to look inside. She already knew what was there: a jar of pickles, 3 eggs, a half stick of butter, and a bag of frozen peas she used more for sore knees than soup. She glanced at the register. Still $48.23. Still not enough to feed one of these men properly, let alone 15. Cole was back on the stool near the register, his coat now fully open. Beneath the patches and pins was a sweater with holes at the cuffs, the kind people keep because it reminds them of better winters. "You don't charge enough for coffee," he said casually, taking another sip. "Could be $5 a cup easy in a storm like this." Maggie smiled, thin but sincere. Then no one would come in. Cole gave her a long look. One of those slow, steady stares that makes you feel like someone is seeing past your answers. "We'll cover it. The food too." His voice was firm. "It's the least we can do." She hesitated. She could lie, say she had plenty, that she'd planned for nights like this. But he'd already seen the foreclosure notice. It was still there, peeking out from under the register like a secret too big to stay hidden. She tried to brush it away discreetly. "Too late. How long you got?" Cole asked, quiet. Maggie swallowed. 7 days. He nodded slowly. Didn't flinch. Didn't offer a solution. Just held her eyes. "That diner's more than walls and booths," he said. "You've been keeping a light on for people like us for years, haven't you?" She said nothing, but her silence confirmed it. Jared used to call the lantern their pause button on life. Travelers would pull in just for pie, but leave with something heavier off their shoulders. This place had always been a home for the tired, and now, the tired had returned. Later, as the wind roared and the windows fogged over, the men began to settle in. Some stretched across the booths, their jackets draped like blankets. Others played cards with a deck so bent it looked like it had lived 3 lives already. Marcus sat with Frankie, quietly carving a toothpick into something that looked like a bird. Jace had fallen asleep at the window booth. His arms crossed, his face soft in sleep. Maggie caught herself staring at him. At the boy under the leather. He couldn't have been older than 22. She walked over and gently placed a folded dish towel over his shoulders. Frankie noticed and smiled. "You've got that mom energy," he said. "The real kind. The kind you don't find at truck stops." Maggie chuckled softly. "He reminds me of someone I lost." Frankie nodded without asking who. "Some things don't need follow-up." Just then, Marcus reached under his jacket and slid something across the table. A photograph. Old faded, a young man in uniform, arms folded. "Standing in front of a desert tent, my boy," he said simply. "Still overseas, Afghanistan. Comes home next month, God willing." Maggie's eyes misted. "You must be proud." "Every day," Marcus said. Scared too. Every minute, it was quiet for a moment. But not the awkward kind. The kind that respects the weight of what's been shared. Back at the counter, Maggie poured herself a cup. Her hands were trembling slightly, and not from the cold. She had no plan, no food, no way to fix this, and yet she didn't feel alone. Not tonight. These men, tough, ragged, tattooed, had arrived like a storm of their own. But they weren't here to destroy. They were here because of something deeper. Because this little diner, with its cracked booths and buzzing light, had once been a beacon, and tonight the storm had guided them home. By 10:30, the storm had buried the world outside. Snow coated the gas pumps, the lot, even the highway signs. It looked like someone had dropped a white curtain over the world. Inside the lantern, time softened. The bikers had spread out into groups, some quietly playing cards, others nursing coffee like it was medicine. Maggie had given up worrying about how long they'd stay. She was listening now, to the stories. It started when Marcus leaned forward and asked gently, "How long you been running this place, ma'am?" Maggie, seated at the counter with her cup, looked up. 15 years this spring, he scratched his beard. You ever have a guy pull in? A red-bearded trucker, maybe 13 years ago. Chest pains. Parked out front in a panic? The memory snapped into her like a Polaroid. Tommy, she whispered. She remembered running out into the snow that night. The ambulance was blocked on the canyon road. She'd thrown him in her old Subaru and sped down the switchbacks herself. Waited with him at the hospital. Called his wife. Paid for his parking. She hadn't thought of that night in years. Marcus grinned. Tommy's my brother-in-law. Married my sister after he got clean. He calls you the Angel of Red Hill. Swears that night saved his life and more than that, changed it. Maggie flushed. I just did what anyone would have. Marcus shook his head. No, ma'am. Anyone didn't. That's the point. The room quieted. And then it happened like floodgates cracking open. Frankie leaned back in his booth. 5 years ago. Stopped here on my way to Reno. My little girl had been hit by a drunk driver. He looked down. I was losing it. Couldn't think. Forgot how to breathe. Yui, he pointed at Maggie. You handed me a grilled cheese, a coffee, and a napkin with directions to the hospital. Didn't charge me. Told me to go, said you'd pray. He paused. She lived. I never forgot. Maggie blinked, stunned. She hadn't known. Pete, the one who'd barely spoken all night, chimed in. Blew a tire out back in 18. Middle of a storm just like this one. Robert, your husband, right? He came out with a flashlight and helped me change it. Wouldn't take a dime. The room was buzzing now. Energy shifting from stillness to recognition. They hadn't just stumbled onto a diner. They had returned to something sacred. And then, Jace, quiet, nervous Jace, cleared his throat. Every eye turned to him. He looked down at his coffee. Then up at Maggie. His hands trembled slightly. You might not remember me, he said. I was here 3 years ago. Bike was rattling like it wanted to die. I was broke. Out of gas. Out of plans. I just left college. My folks stopped speaking to me. I didn't know where I was headed, his voice wavered. Truth is, I wasn't planning to go much further. The diner went still. Even the wind outside seemed to hush. I stopped here because it was the only light I saw. You came out before I even shut off the engine. Said I looked like I hadn't eaten in days. You fed me. Let me warm up. And when I tried to pay, you just smiled and said, rough nights happen. Don't let it be your last. Jace's voice broke slightly. Then you gave me a card. Said you knew a guy in Boise who helped young folks find jobs. I called. He picked up. Got me work at a mechanic shop. I've been there ever since. He looked around at the men beside him. That guy hired me. Introduced me to these guys. Brought me into this family. He looked at Maggie. You didn't just feed me. You gave me a reason not to end it. Maggie's hand flew to her mouth. Her coffee sat forgotten all these years. All those late nights she thought had passed like shadows. And now, they returned not as memories but as men. She turned slowly to Cole. His face held a softness now. Not sadness, not even pride, recognition. You never asked for thanks, he said. But that's why we're here. This place, this light, you've saved more lives than you'll ever know. Maggie stood behind the counter. Her knees weak, her heart racing. For the first time in years, she felt the full weight of what she'd built. Not a business. Not a diner, but a sanctuary. Not just for the lost, for the nearly gone. And one thought echoed in her mind. Maybe the storm hadn't brought them here. Maybe the light had. Cole didn't say much after Jace finished speaking. He just stood quietly, refilled his mug, then glanced toward the front door. I need to step outside, he said, before Maggie could protest. It's freezing. It's midnight. You'll get sick. He was already pulling on his coat, zipping it halfway, and tucking his phone deep into an inside pocket. He gave her a small nod. Don't turn off the light, Maggie. Not tonight. The door closed behind him, and the storm swallowed him whole. Outside, Cole paced, boots crunching snow, phone pressed to his ear. The wind whipped hard, trying to snatch his words before they landed. But Cole kept speaking, slow, steady, clear. It's Bishop, he said into the first call. You remember Maggie Green? The voice on the other end paused, then said, Everyone remembers Maggie Green. Inside, The diner had grown quiet again. Maggie watched the storm from behind the counter, her reflection barely visible in the fogged window. Jace had fallen back asleep, curled up on the booth like a child safe for the first time in years. Frankie and Pete were playing cards, half-heartedly. The mood had shifted. No longer fear, no longer just gratitude. Now, it felt like something bigger was coming, something no one could name. Marcus stirred his coffee in slow circles and said softly, "Whatever Cole's planning, it won't be small." Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Is he calling for help?" Marcus shook his head. "Not help. Family." Cole was gone nearly an hour. By the time he stepped back inside, his hair was dusted white with snow, and his coat crackled from frost. He didn't speak at first, just looked around the room like he was checking that everyone was safe. Then he poured another cup of coffee, sat beside Maggie and gave her a faint smile. "Morning's going to be interesting." Maggie squinted. "Why? What did you do?" Cole shrugged. "Made a few calls." "To who?" He took a slow sip. "People who still believe in paying debts that matter." Before she could ask again, the CB radio in the corner crackled. It had been silent for months. Dusty, forgotten. Just a relic on a shelf. But now it sparked to life. Breaker 19. "This is Hammerhead, rolling east from Boise. We heard the Angels in trouble." "E to 3 hours." Marcus looked up, eyes wide. "Boise." The radio crackled again. "Road Dog here. Salt Lake chapter on the move. 40 bikes. We ride with her." Then another. "Grizzly calling from Great Falls. Snow or not, we're headed south." "For Maggie." Maggie stared at the radio, stunned. What is happening?" Cole smiled softly, eyes never leaving the radio. "You didn't think people forgot about you, did you?" She opened her mouth to answer, but headlights flashed outside, not motorcycle beams this time. Big beams, trucks, sedans, SUVs, the kind of vehicles you only see on long hauls or family emergencies. The kind of vehicles that move when hearts move first. Within minutes, her parking lot, which had been a frozen graveyard hours ago, was filling up like a homecoming parade. A pickup truck pulled in first. Wyoming plates, then a rust-red van from Utah, then a snow-covered RV from Billings. People began climbing out. Men, women, even a few teenagers wrapped in layers, blinking against the snow as they moved toward the warm glow of the lantern. Some faces were familiar. Some weren't, but they all walked in with one look. Recognition, not just of the diner, of her. The door swung open. A tall man with a red beard stomped snow off his boots and looked right at Maggie. "Maggie Green," he boomed. "You saved my sorry hide 13 years ago, and I've been looking for a way to repay it ever since." He crossed the floor in 2 long strides and wrapped her in a bear hug so tight it lifted her off her feet. "Tommy Patterson," he whispered, voice cracking. "I never forgot." More followed. A woman from Colorado who said Maggie once gave her free pie and a map when her daughter was missing. A father from Nevada who'd once lost his job, found himself at the lantern and walked out with gas money and a prayer. A young couple who'd been snowed in 10 years ago, broke and scared, and remembered Maggie letting them sleep in the back booth. Now they had a child of their own, and they brought her. The room was full now. Maggie looked around at the sea of leather jackets, heavy coats, old memories, and new gratitude, and she realized she wasn't alone. She'd never been. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, it was warm, glowing, alive. The lantern had become more than a place. It was now a legend, and legends, when threatened, have a way of calling their people home. By dawn, the lantern was no longer just a diner. It was a beacon, and the storm had become its backdrop, not its enemy. Snow kept falling, but no one was leaving. If anything, more were arriving. The parking lot overflowed. Motorcycles lined up in neat rows, exhaust rising in clouds like steam from battle steeds. Pickups and station wagons hugged the shoulder of the highway, and every vehicle that pulled in brought another piece of Maggie's forgotten past. But she wasn't forgotten anymore. She was being remembered, loudly, lovingly, and in leather. Inside, Maggie stood near the register, overwhelmed. Not by fear this time, by the sheer force of gratitude. Hugs came from bikers she'd never met, Tears rolled down cheeks she thought too weathered for softness. A toddler in pigtails gave her a picture she'd drawn of Miss Maggie and the nice castle, the diner, her home. Her battlefield, her heartbreak, had transformed into a cathedral of kindness. Cole approached, flanked by Marcus and Frankie. He carried a thick envelope and a rolled-up paper tube in one hand. "We had a little meeting," he said. "All the chapters. All the people you've helped, whether you remember them or not." He handed her the envelope. Maggie opened it with trembling hands. Cash, stacks of it, 10s, 20s, 50s. Bundled with rubber bands and biker patches, Cole said softly, $68,000. Enough to pay off the bank. Enough to fix the roof, maybe even buy that freezer that doesn't wheeze like a dying moose. Maggie gasped. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," said a gravelly voice from behind her. She turned. A tall woman in full biker gear stepped forward. Her jacket read, "Angel Sisters, Salt Lake Chapter. You earned every dollar. We just helped bring it home." Cole unrolled the paper, an architect's blueprint. "We talked to a contractor. Volunteer crews ready." He pointed to the drawing. A new dining wing, a biker lounge with secure parking maintenance bays for cross-country travelers, upgraded heating, plumbing, insulation. "This place doesn't just survive anymore, Maggie. It grows." She stared at the sketch, stunned, speechless. Frankie leaned in. "And you won't have to worry about protection, ever." "Why?" she whispered. Marcus answered, "Because the Lantern is now an official stop on the Northern Road Brotherhood circuit. Anyone tries to mess with this place, hell, just look at you wrong. Every chapter from Nevada to North Dakota will hear about it." Then the CB radio crackled again. Breaker 19. "This is Road Dog. We've got 40 bikes about 5 miles out. Eat at 10 minutes. We're coming in hot for the Angel." The room exploded in cheers. Someone started banging a spoon on a plate. "She's ours now," someone yelled. Maggie couldn't hold back her tears anymore. As the engines roared outside, Cole leaned close and spoke softly. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Maggie wiped her eyes, shaking her head. "Last night you didn't see outlaws. You didn't see danger. You saw 15 tired, frozen men, and you opened your door. That's what saved us." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrinkled card. "Tommy wanted you to have this back." He placed it in her hand. It was her old business card, the same one she'd handed a hopeless trucker 13 years ago. On the back was a note. Hand scrawled, "For the angel who left her light on for strangers. You gave me a reason to keep living." Maggie held the card to her chest. Her breath caught. 6 months later, the Lantern had become something else entirely. Featured in Easy, Writers Magazine, a top-rated rest stop across biker forums listed. On Google Maps as the Angel's Diner, bikers came not just for the food, but for the story. For the legend. No one caused trouble here. No one dared. Within a 50-mile radius, even the roughest riders rode with respect. Word had spread. This place is off limits. It belongs to Maggie. She never raised her prices. She still gave pie away to anyone who looked like they'd been crying in their truck. The booths stayed red and cracked. The jukebox still stuck on track 4, but now, there was something different. Every time someone walked through the door, they looked around like they were entering something sacred. Not a restaurant, a lighthouse. And every night, as the CB radio hummed, Maggie would lean into the mic and say the same thing. "This is the Lantern. The light's on, the coffee's hot, and the road's always open for family." Because in the end, she was never just a diner owner. She was a keeper of stories, a rescuer of the lost, a quiet, unshakable guardian of the road. They didn't see an old woman. They saw the light she never turned off. And when the world got cold, when the snow tried to bury her legacy, they came back, not out of duty, but because she gave them a reason to believe in good again. Maggie Green didn't run a diner. She ran a sanctuary, a rescue station, a reminder that kindness echoes longer than we ever realize. And now, across the western highways, her story rides with every biker who once found warmth in her coffee and hope in her silence. She wasn't just a diner owner, she was a legend. And here's the part no one tells you. Sometimes the most powerful guardian angels don't wear wings. They wear aprons, so if this story stirred something in you, hope, Tears, anger, or gratitude, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Tell us who was your Maggie. Subscribe for more true stories that prove one person can change the world. This is Celebrity Undercover Stories, where everyday heroes walk quietly until the day their kindness roars back.